Hi. In this problem, we're going to practice how to determine if an expense has been incurred, and if so, how to record it. Let's start by reviewing what an expense is. An expense is a cost of doing business necessary to help you earn your revenues in the period covered by the income statement. In other words, you have received the benefit of a cost. It's helped you earn revenues. They are also the resources that you've used up, like supplies, for example, in the process of earning revenue. Now the question is, when do we record them? For that answer, we look to the expense recognition principle, which is sometimes called the matching principle. We record revenues in the same period. We record expenses in the same period as the revenues that they helped to generate, regardless of when cash is paid. So we record the expense in the period you benefited from the cost. The benefit is that they helped you earn revenue. So we try to match the expense against the revenue it helped to create in order to determine if we earned a net income or incurred a net loss. If it can't be easily matched, then we record it in the same period as the underlying activity. So for example, advertising placed during the month of July and run during the month of July should be recorded as a July expense because it helped to generate July revenue. Electricity used during the month of July should be recorded as an expense in July because it helped to generate July revenue. So let's take a look at this problem. This is still on Bill's Extreme Bowling. The following transactions are July activities of Bill's Extreme Bowling, which operates several bowling centers. If an expense is to be recognized in July, indicate the amount. And by the way, in accounting speak, the word recognize means record. In A, bills paid $1,500 in July to plumbers for repairing a broken pipe in the restrooms. So we're assuming that the repair occurred in the month of July. If the repair occurred in July, then you received the benefit of the cost in July, so we would record an expense in July. So our main question is going to be, did we receive the benefit of cost in July in the case of this problem? In B, Bill's Extreme Bowling paid $2,000 for the June electricity bill. Now let's stop there because the second part will be treated differently. Bills paid $2,000 for the June bill. Now, if electricity was received in June, it should have been recorded as an expense in the month of June. So we will not record it as an expense in July. So there will be no June electricity expense recorded in the month of July. In the second part of this, it says that Bill's Extreme Bowling received the July bill for $2,500, which will be paid in August. Now we're recording transactions of Bill's Extreme Bowling for the month of July. So if you received the electricity in July, it should be recorded as an expense in July. It is incurred in July, which means you received the benefit of the cost in July. The June's electricity should have been recorded in June. In C, Bill's Extreme Bowling paid $5,475 to employees for work in July. Did we receive the benefit of that cost in July? Yes, the employees helped us earn revenue in July, so we're going to record it as an expense in July. So again, to review, expenses are recorded in the same month as the revenues they helped to create. It is in that month that you receive the benefit of the cost. So the question we asked ourselves in this problem is, did we receive the benefit of that cost in the month of July? And if we did, we said expense should be recorded for that month, July. Let's go on to the second part of the problem. Okay, now let's pick up with the next part of the problem. In this part of the problem, we will be recording the transactions we just reviewed by using journal entries. Remember, journal entries are the only way we can get information into our accounting records. The journal is called the Book of Original Entry for that very reason. So let's go to the first transaction, or transaction A. Bills paid $1,500 to plumbers for repairing a broken pipe in the restrooms. And we decided that since the repair was made in the month of July, an expense should be recorded in the month of July. So how do we record expenses? Well, we talked about this in the last video we did, but let's review. It's all based on the expanded accounting equation. The way we calculate whether we made a net income or not is to take our revenues and subtract our expenses. That will give us a net income or loss. The net income or loss is part of our retained earnings. If you recall, the retained earnings account is the accumulated net income less dividends since the company began. Our net income gets added to our retained earnings account. Our retained earnings is part of stockholders' equity. So the rules for revenues and expenses have to follow the rules for stockholders' equity. Revenues and expenses are subsets of retained earnings, which is part of stockholders' equity. Well, as stockholders' equity, since it's on the right side of the accounting equation, it gets recorded, we record increases on the right or credit side. That's why we credited to record revenues. Revenues are recorded on the right because they increase earnings and consequently stockholders' equity. Expenses do the opposite. They are subtracted to figure out net income. They will reduce earnings and consequently equity, so we record expenses on the left or the debit side. So in this case, we're going to debit repairs and maintenance expense to record the expense, and we will credit cash because it's said to record the payment. Now, by the way, when we say the word cash, we really don't mean paid in cash. We mean paid from the cash account. We usually use a checking account for such things. In all journal entries, we have at least one debit, at least one credit. If we have only one of each, the numbers or amounts must match, and we always enter debits before credits, as Connect reminds us. Let's record the entry and do B. B Part 1 says to record the payment of $2,000 for the June electricity bill. Now, we decided that June's electricity should have been recorded in June. Let's assume that it was. In June, utilities expense should have been debited. But what did they credit since they didn't pay it? They credited accounts payable, an amount that will be paid in the future. Okay, so now we're paying something that we recorded the expense for last month. If we're paying something, we're giving up cash. What are we receiving? We're receiving release from our debt or the accounts payable. So we are reducing the liability accounts payable. Accounts payable is on the right side of the accounting equation, so we increase by putting amounts on the right or the credit side. So how do we reduce? We do the opposite. We reduce or decrease by doing the opposite. So we will debit accounts payable to reduce our debt by $2,000, and we'll credit cash. Assets are on the left side of the accounting equation. We increase by left-siding or debiting. When we want to do the opposite, to decrease cash, we'll credit. Part 2 of Transaction B is to record the receipt of the July electricity bill for $2,500, which will be paid in August. Okay. Our question is, did we receive the benefit of the cost during July? Yes, we did. We received the electricity in July, so it should be recorded as an expense in July. Remember, we debit to record expenses because they reduce earnings and retained earnings and stockholders' equity consequently. So we debit to record expenses. What do we credit? Because we're not going to pay this until August. We'll credit accounts payable because we'll be paying it in the future. Liabilities, like accounts payable, are on the right side of the accounting equation. Therefore, we credit or right side them to increase them. And in our last transaction, we're recording the payment of $5,475 to employees for work in July. Our question is, did we receive the benefit of the cost in July? Yes, we did. They worked for us in July, and we were able to earn revenue in July because of it. So let's debit the expense, salaries and wages expense. Again, remember, we debit expenses. They have to follow the rules of stockholders' equity because they are subsets of retained earnings. We credit to increase revenues because they increase earnings. We debit to increase expenses because they decrease earnings. It said record the payment, which means we're reducing our cash account. Cash is an asset. Normally we debit assets to increase or put them on the left side, but we want to decrease cash, so we're going to do the opposite, put the amount on the right or the credit side, and we'll record that. Now let's take a look at our general journal. In transactions A and C, in both cases, the benefit of the cost was received in the month of July, and it was paid for in the month of July. In transaction B, we're paying for something that was received the prior month, electricity expense that was received the prior month in June, so we could not debit the expense account. We reduced our liability, our debt, for that electricity. In the month of July here in B2, we received the bill for July, so it must be recorded as an expense in July, but we did not pay for it, so we record a liability. In other words, cash does not matter. We record an expense when we have received the benefit of the cost. Have a great day.